Welcome back to Get Set Builds. Before I played Bricadia, I used to follow dev diaries for Scrap Mechanic long before it was released. When it was released, I had intended to make my first videos on it. But then I procrastinated, and then it always felt like it was too late. But here we are now, Get Set Build's first Scrap Mechanic video. The Bricadia shorts aren't going to stop. Over there we're still working on building dungeon tiles, but today I'd like to dive into a survival game of Scrap Mechanic. Playing the voice of the Get Set Builder, I've never shared that I usually go by the name Lucid. Unlike in Bricadia, this player character is based on my real-world appearance. A fun little detail I wanted to throw in to put a face to the voice. So let's get started on a new survival map. I've actually cleared out my save folder so you can see what it looks like to do a first-time setup. We'll call it Get Set Builds. I've seen a lot of playthroughs for this game that rely heavily on exploits, such as crushing the enemies with your lift or the famous suspension glitch to prevent your vehicles from falling over. As much as I love novel solutions, I'd like to try doing a playthrough a little more in the spirit of the game, without cheating. I'm going to cover some tricks to skip some of the more grindier aspects of this game, but other than that, I'm going to try to go out of my way to try to do some of the things the hardest way I can. As a longtime veteran of this game, I'm going to note that there's a couple annoying things right out of the gate. There's a great tutorial in the beginning, which you can build this demo car, but the car is worse than useless, and your tutorial will lock the progress of your game until you finish it. I'm just going to speed through this next part. So this is what we need to grab up here, the battery, and speed our way back. Now this next part is why I grabbed the battery first, because there are actually 3 of these buckets that we can grab. One there, one over here, and one that was on top of the building with the battery. And now we can fill all 3 of these buckets. And the reason it's nice to have 3 at a time is because we need to put out these fires inside of the ship. And every time you run out of buckets, you have to run all the way back over the water to fill them back up again. Having 3 buckets really speeds this up, and even allows you to put out some of these little things like this on the side if you feel like making things look really pretty in here, even though we're never coming back. Then, here is the second problem you'll run into early in the game, is inventory space. Before we get any chests built, we want to grab as much stuff as we can to bring with us, but we have very limited space to carry it. Unfortunately, we'll have to leave some things behind, like this Mechanic of the Month calendar, our cup, and ironically, we're going to leave behind these storage containers because they really don't hold very much. One thing I refuse to leave behind, however, is this radio, because there's nothing like cruising around in Scrap Mechanic with the Scrap Mechanic radio playing. And because you surely will not have enough materials, I recommend going to this nearby building to collect some. I'm a little rusty at combat. Let's see how I hold up without cheating. No jumping on the lifts or anything like that. Not my best, but it's also the first time I fought a Haybot this year, so let's try another one. That's how it's done. No cheating with the lift, and then we can collect the materials. All this filming and combat has got me thirsty for a nice sunshake. Let's have a second one. And shall we try another fight? Fortunately, we'll find a bunch of these robot pieces lying around, even outside of the ones that we defeated, which are going to be essential to build our first car, which we're not going to keep anyway. I always like the way the lights attract moths in this game. I may not be the first one to point it out, but I might be the first one to show them close up. This is the sort of captivating production quality you only get from Get Set Builds. Close-up moth cam. Sunday, 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 come see the extraordinary moth detail. Just $5. So let's take a look at what this game's about. Similar to games like Minecraft, we can build with these voxel cubes in Scrap Mechanic. However, instead of just buildings and terrain, we can create vehicles in Scrap Mechanic. Honestly, it's a lot like Bricadia. We can hook up wheels with bearings and we have pistons instead of hinges. And then once we get everything built, we wire it up with our wiring tool, also like Bricadia. And just like that, we have our first vehicle in Scrap Mechanic, which is honestly just terrible. These wheels are worse than walking, and it's a little frustrating having to build it once you already know how to build in this game. Besides building, the other thing we'll be doing is planting crops. The theme of Scrap Mechanic is that we're on a farming planet where the farm bots have gone haywire. We're the mechanics that have been sent to deal with this problem, and in the process we need to farm ourselves to be able to survive. We farm by placing down dirt tiles, and then we place seeds in them and water them. Additionally, we can also use fertilizer to speed up the growth. However, we have to be careful. Only the farm bots are authorized to farm on this planet. If they detect us farming, they'll come and raid our farms. Eventually, we're going to need to be able to break these large rocks in order to get stone and metal. We can't break it with just our hammer, so we're going to have to progress in the game a bit before we can do that. One thing I used to like doing was standing on top of the rocks and allowing the farm bots to destroy them for me. However, this doesn't seem to work anymore, which is strange because it did work after the last big update, so it must have changed during this smaller patch. Something we will want to do early on is collect these pieces of corn. We can feed the corn to the cows, and the cows will start dropping milk for us. The milk will refill both our hunger and our thirst. Although it fills up much more thirst, it does still fill a little bit of hunger. I've run into this debate that the milk is not a very good food. However, it's extremely easy to come by, so you can just have as many as it takes to fill your hunger. Later on, you'll want to get a farm going, but early on, it's so much faster to just grab a few pieces of corn and then refill on milk without having to wait an entire day for your crops to regrow, which is especially useful if you're very close to death and don't have the time to wait for the crops to grow. One argument I've heard against this method is the amount of inventory space it takes to store milk. However, it takes your crops to get to the next tier levels of technology, so I highly recommend spamming milk in this way in the early game. So the next thing we'll want to do is come back to the ship and collect our logbook. The logbook allows you to track things like time, day, beacons. It also allows you to look at your various mission progress. But there's an interesting quirk of the logbook. You open it up behind the menu of the logbook, so you can never see the in-game logbook, except for a tiny little bit as you close the menu. Let's slow it down to see what the logbook really looks like. Huh, cool. We never get to see that very well in-game. I love catching little details like that. Regardless of your opinion of the corn and milk, one thing you'll definitely want to collect is beeswax. Beeswax is actually surprisingly common and can be found along these cliff-based rocks. And a quick tip for gathering it: in case it's in a high-up place like this one, you can actually grab it from surprisingly far away. The thing about beeswax is, though it's very common in the world, you never seem to have enough of it right when you need it. And the thing you need it for is for tires. We'll be looking for beeswax on our way to finding the mechanic station, which we can identify by seeing this large glowing wrench. When we get to the mechanic station, we come in here to grab our battery, and then we bring our battery into the mechanic station and pop that right in here. This will allow us to make new crafting items, such as the craft bot, the cook bot, the refine bot, the dress bot, and the resource collector. The craft bot allows us to craft the majority of the items we're going to need for building. The cook bot allows us to take our farmed crops and turn them into foods, such as the pizza burger, the veggie burger, or the revival baguette. The dress bot allows us to change our appearance, and we can turn in garment boxes in order to unlock new cosmetics. The resource collector allows us to automatically or manually gather resources, and it works in conjunction with the refine bot to turn our resources into usable materials that we can craft with. In the future, there'll be a bot for cutting angled wedge bricks, However, this bot isn't in survival yet. You can only see these bricks in creative mode. It's honestly a lot of fun unlocking all these cosmetic options. Most of them can be obtained through garment boxes in the survival mode. However, there are a few you can also get during the challenge mode as well. And now that we've finished our demo vehicle tutorial and we got ourselves situated in the mechanic shop, now is a good time to turn in for the night. So let's go to bed. This will set our respawn point so that if we die, we'll respawn back here again. Have fun out there, and I'll see you next time on Get Set Builds.